Welcome back to No Fluff Just Stuff Network. I'm here today with DanielHinojosa.
Good.
Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
So Daniel's one of our featured speakers on the No Fluff Just Stuff tour, and first thing I'd want to discuss with him further is Scala. So why don't we, for those that aren't familiar with Scala as an alternative JVM language, why don't you discuss what it is?
Well, Scala is a hybrid paradigm language. It brings in functional programming to the Java space. So I consider it a Java++. I believe it's the next generation for Java. It has a lot of the features that Java does not have that I believe a lot of Java programmers actually crave.
Such as?
Definitely functions, higher order functions, partial functions, the list goes on and on. It just has so many different elements that you can apply to your programming to make things easier, to make things simpler, to make things a little bit more readable. So we have a Scala Cohen's, I wouldn't say a presentation, but it's something that's offered in No Fluff Just Stuff, as well as other conferences where a lot of the attendees can come over and try Scala out, the different features of that. There are numerous features, so by coming to a No Fluff Just Stuff and attending one of these Cohens, they'll see all the different great features that come with Scala.
So talk about the ramp-up time. I'm a traditional Java developer and I'm interested in learning Scala, but I'm somewhat hesitant because of the time that needs to be spent. Is one of the features of Scala, since it is what you characterize as a Java++, should be pretty intuitive? I mean, obviously there's an amount of time that's going to have to be required to be spent.
Yeah, see, that's going to be a tough one. It is intuitive. I mean, they're not doing anything outside of logic. It's a very logical programming language. It is intuitive, but I'm going to be the odd man out and say it's not easy. You will have to invest time in learning Scala. But the analogy that I always have is you need to move bricks from one lower level to a higher level. How do you do it? Well, you could do it the easy way. It's going to be more manual. You're going to have to lift that brick and carry it up manually. Or you could learn to use a crane. But in learning a crane, there's going to be some difficulty in it.
Sure.
You have to learn the mechanics. You have to learn about wind. When is the best time to use it, and what angle should you load stuff from one level to another. So I consider Scala that crane. There is some intellectual investment that you need to do in order to learn Scala. So,
but time well spent, and I think
time well spent, absolutely.
The key is now we have this opportunity to learn a new language, but actually use it because it's within the JVM family. So
yep. But it's going to make you a better programmer, not only in Java, but also in Ruby and Python and in other languages. I think that it is I think it's a very like a train station central into learning other programming languages. Once you learn Scala and understand a lot of the features, you're going to learn a lot of different other programming languages, and probably understand a lot of different programming languages a lot easier.
Okay. So obviously one of Scala's great features is it's functionally based and offers that intrinsic benefit, but talk about its hybrid paradigm for people that maybe aren't up to speed with Scala and what makes it different.
Well, I'll just go with my interpretation of that. Haskell is a pure functional language, meaning there isn't a lot of state with it. So a lot of these functional programming languages do not have state. Something like Clojure has an STM to control that state. Whereas Scala, being a hybrid, you can create objects, you can create classes very much like Java does, and it will hold state. You don't have to go that far like Haskell does in order to create some of that state. You can create your objects, that objects will store state. Everything you do in Java in an object-oriented way, you can do in Scala. But you could also integrate functional paradigm within the language as well. So you can use a lot of these objects in a functional way. So I think that's what makes Scala pretty unique.
So could we make the analogy, like when people went from C++ to Java, kind of that first iteration, people applied the C++ methodologies in the Java space, but then soon learned the merits and value of Java the language and became truly Java developers. So let's say I'm a Java developer moving to Scala. Since I can create objects in their classes, I could start there, but then over time become more functional in nature.
Yep, absolutely. That is the point.
Okay.
I believe that is the point of the entire reason of being for Scala is to be able to do that. Bring those Java programmers over and get them to think in a totally different way. But not so much so that you're not lost.
Right.
You do have that anchor, which was all your Java experience to begin with.
Gotcha. Okay, good to know.
Yep.
So what we see now in terms of the language landscape are two functional languages that run on the JVM that are what I would consider to be the most popular, and that's
Right.
Scala and Clojure. Why don't you do just kind of a quick compare contrast between the two so
Okay.
people get a sense of what the differences are?
Okay. Well, I'm not too much of a Clojure guy,
Okay.
but I am familiar with some of Clojure. Clojure, I think, is definitely more purely functional type of language, where again, Scala is a hybrid. I definitely think for Scala's going to be more friendly for the Java object-oriented programming developer. Clojure, also you have to put some intellectual investment in that, but it is very Lisp-based. It is a Lisp language, so the structure is going to be a little bit different. I think for the Java programmer who's never really seen or used a Lisp language before, Clojure is, you're going to have to definitely dedicate more time with Clojure.
Sure.
Two different languages, two different flavors. It's just going to be based on how you feel about it. I believe Clojure is also not statically type, whereas Scala is. So you'll always be able to manage your type within Scala, whereas in Clojure it takes care of that for you, for better or worse.
Right.
So I think those are going to be the distinct differences in choosing which language you use. But again, most no-fluff just stuffers are very multi-language, so there's a lot of them that use Clojure and Scala together. But that's just the nature of our speakers and our attendees.
Sure. Well, and I think it's a great thing that we have, just like we have Groovy and JRuby on the dynamic side of the equation, on the functional side we've got Clojure and Scala. So I think having two is great in terms of innovation, ideas, competition. That brings out the best in everybody. So
Sure.
everybody ends up winning at the end of the day.
Yeah, and I think most no-fluff just stuffer speakers definitely know probably all of those languages. And I think also a lot of the attendees, I mean, just like to play with all those different kinds of languages, so I wouldn't be surprised if most of them don't know all of them.
Yeah, well, and the thing is, circling back around to what you were saying earlier, just this idea of learning another language that can now be applied not only helps you in terms of your breadth, but also gives you better depth in terms of being a Java developer. So
Right.
learning Scala and being able to take some of the ideas and put that in the Java space can be very beneficial.
Yeah, and especially one of the things, the first book that came out, they call it the Steps book, from Artima. I learned so much about Java learning Scala that for things like how to implement an actual equals method and do it the right way so that you're not bit later on, because what you think you put in this set is not necessarily what you're going to get back out of it.
Right.
So there's a lot of eye-openers that you didn't realize you knew about until you move on and learn something else in a different language. So yeah, definitely worth the time.
Very good. Well, we appreciate your time, Daniel, and sharing your
Yes.
insights as far as Scala is concerned and functional languages as a whole. Thank you.
Yep, thank you.